I'm Kristen.
I'm Jay.
And I'm Sarah.
And we have the answers to all your questions about which school deserves
your
Chili Peppers!
Yay!
Alright, so first what we're going to do is we're going to use a systematic sample for the study. We're going to look up the professors in alphabetical order and then record the data starting on the 6th professor listed and then every 20th professor after that, which we chose by random sampling. And then the professors without ratings are not going to be included in this. So then to collect the data, we collected the names of the school, if they were BYU, BYU Idaho, BYU Hawaii, or LDS Business College. The names of the professors, the difficulty of the class, which was on a scale from 1 to 5, if the professor had a chili pepper or not, and then the overall rating of the class, which again was on a scale of 1 to 5.
So now we're going to look at our null and alternative hypothesis. With our study, we looked at many different things, but first we looked at the difficulty of the class. Our null hypothesis is that the mean of BYU equals the mean of BYU Idaho, which equals the mean of BYU Hawaii, which equals the mean of LDS Business College. And the alternative hypothesis is that all, at least one, differs from each other. For the chili peppers, our null hypothesis was the chili peppers are independent of BYU school, and the alternative is that they are not independent. And lastly, for the overall rating, the null hypothesis was that 4 schools' overall rating are equal to each other, and the alternative is if one differs.
Okay, so we're going to start comparing the data. So first we need to compare the relationship of the difficulty of class of all the BYU schools. But in order to do that, we have to make sure the requirements are met. And then we can run a hypothesis test. Based on these QQ plots, we see that they are all approximately normal because the data forms a linear line. Based on this ANOVA hypothesis test, we found that our p-value is 0.162. So using a significance level of 0.05, we fail to reject the null, meaning that our difficulty of classes between BYU schools are roughly the same. Now we're going to look at the comparison of chili peppers between schools and see if we can run a chi-squared hypothesis test to see if the school and their chili peppers are independent of each other. And by looking at the expected count, we can tell that the requirements are all met. By looking at the summary statistics for the chili pepper data, we can see that there is insufficient evidence to assume that the chili pepper ratings are not independent of BYU schools. By looking at our p-value, we can safely assume that they are independent, just like we stated in our null hypothesis. Now we want to see the comparison of the BYU schools' overall rating. We assume that through our null hypothesis that the ratings would be about the same, but in order to complete an ANOVA test, we have to first make sure that all the requirements are met. By looking at the QQ plots, one can tell that all the data is evenly distributed and ready to be tested. So looking at our overall rating summary statistics, because of our p-value being low, we rejected our null. We can now infer that the data proves that there is at least one school that has higher overall ratings than the other school.
Alright, so then using an alpha of 0.05 and a confidence level of 95%, we can infer these differences. Since everything was recorded through Rate My Professor, on a scale of 1 to 5, there aren't any outliers because they couldn't be more than 5. And then since we didn't include every class in our study, but as a whole, each school is typically not more difficult than the other, as stated earlier. And then in general, it cannot be proven that the chili pepper ratings are independent of their schools. However, one school can be proven to have an overall higher rating than other schools.
So lastly, we're going to take some action in this. We're going to change the population, and we would like to look at how we could modify and change that. So with doing that, we would like to only include those professors that have chili peppers. On another study, it would be interesting to calculate the difficulty of the class to see if there would be an influence in the overall population to receive a chili pepper.
So this is our data, and
Yeah, hopefully if you guys have any questions, you can come to us. But yeah, if you wanted to do the study again or change anything, you're more than welcome to.
Bye!